Hey there, this is Red, and it's time for a Red review. So this is a little bit different review, and we're going to go back and review the top 5 things that I messed up playing Marvel Champions with Spider-Man as I started out. So there's a lot of rules in Marvel Champions, and some of them can be fairly tough to follow. But these are actually, they're pretty straightforward, but they're easy to skim by in the rule book, or if you're not paying attention or learning the game, they're things that you just don't see. So, and that's my excuse for why I didn't see them when I messed them up the first time that I played. So let's go over these, and hopefully this will help enhance you in your playing of your game. So we're gonna go with the first one is it's a very simple one, is the web shooter, right? So the first thing you're gonna probably do is Spider-Man, and you'll be like, oh, I'm gonna have Peter Parker out there. I've got a web shooter in my hand, and I'm going to play my web shooter. You're going to use your science resource, and you're going to get that web shooter out there. And then the next thing is you probably have another web shooter in there, and you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to use this web shooter to pay for the other web shooter. That doesn't work because the web shooter is a hero resource, right? So you have to be Spider-Man in order to use the web shooter. And it's really easy to just think of it as a generic resource you can grab from no matter what form you're in, but you have to be Spider-Man in order to use that hero resource. And you'll see that with other heroes out there too, where a lot of the resource cards that they get can only be used in hero form. And it's a pretty special side resource if you can use it in both forms. All right, so similar to that is Enhanced Spider Sense. So this is one of my favorite cards that I see Rhino. I'm Peter Parker. Rhino does a scheme. He schemes for, let's say he schemes for 3. So he goes from 1 on there. Now he's got 4. And the next card he pulls in his advance. And I freak out because I know he's going to scheme out, or I feel like he's going to scheme out. So then I look at my hand and I'm like, oh, I've got Enhanced Spider Sense. That cancels a treachery. I'm going to play that. I can't play that. That is a hero interrupt, right? You have to be in Spider-Man form in order to use Enhanced Spider Sense. So unfortunately, you won't be taking any advances out with Enhanced Spider Sense when you're on your alter ego side, which is really kind of when you need it, but that's the way it is. So it's really natural to want to reach for that and cancel any treachery that comes out, but you have to be in hero form in order to use that. All right, so the next one is, it's a little bit of a combination thing. So let's talk about replacement effects. So one of Spidey's awesome abilities that makes him a fantastic hero is that when a villain comes at you, you get to draw a card, which is great because you get these great hands with all these cards in it. Now, the thing to note is when he is stunned or the webbed up is actually a replacement ability, right? So it says when they would attack, discard the webbed up instead. And stun says when they would attack, discard the status card instead. So what's going to happen is that villain doesn't actually attack. And it's going to be the same thing with confuse. If they go to scheme or you go to thwart, you don't actually do that action. It's the same thing as a hero. You don't actually initiate that attack because the stun is a replacement effect. So things that key off of that attack happening don't happen. So Spider-Man doesn't get the card when a stun goes off or a webbed up is in play, and it prevents the attack. The other thing to note is you might run into a situation where you have both webbed up and stunned, like you have a villain out there that is already stunned. You can put a webbed up on a stunned villain, and the question becomes which goes first. So status cards take effect first, so when the villain would go to attack, the stunned would go away. So then on his next attack, the webbed up would go away and the stunned would come back out. And the third attack he would try, the stunned would go away, right? So the cards are going to take, the status effect cards are going to take precedence to the player cards, right? So you could end up with a villain that's got both of these on him and you know you're pretty well set for 3 attacks. He's not going to do much of anything. So that's actually a really good place to be at. You should try to get there. All right, next up is just simply Nick Fury and my bad understanding of Nick Fury. So what fouled me up with Nick Fury is that last line in Nick Fury here. So last line Nick Fury says, at the end of the round, if Nick Fury is still in play, discard him. So what I was considering end of round was I'm done as a player. That's the end of the round. No, that's not a round. there's some terminology there where that's the player phase, right? So you go through everybody's player phase, then you go through a villain phase, and the two of those are what make up a round. So I did not understand why people like Nick Fury so much. Like, he was a great, like, one-use blocker guy, but because I would get rid of him at the player phase, and then he wouldn't be there for the villain phase. But when he sits around for that villain phase, he's going to soak up a villain attack, usually, as Nick Fury. So make sure that Nick Fury sticks around long enough for a villain to take him out, because that's kind of what he does. So maybe he distracts the villain before he goes out. I don't know. Anyway, so you've got a round is both the player and then the villain action is a round. And each of the individual ones are a phase. All right, last thing is Black Cat here. So Black Cat, at the bottom there, it says you're going to grab 2 cards and then add each card with a printed mental resource discarded this way to your hand. Okay, so where that became confusing to me was what happens when I draw something that has a wild resource. And my assumption was, as a wild resource, I can make it anything that I want to. That's not the way that it works. When I'm discarding cards and I'm looking at what that resource is, that is a wild resource. It's not a mental resource. So I would not get to add that card back to my hand, right? It's different than a mental resource, so then it goes away. This becomes really obvious in something like Hulk, where Hulk has not the hero Hulk, but the ally Hulk has 3 different things that happen, and there's a 4th one for when you grab the wild resource, because it does a specific thing. When you flip those and look at them, they're all evaluated as the thing that they are. Your wild resource doesn't get to become wild and do what you want it to when you flip and reveal it. So unfortunately, Black Cat wouldn't get something like the Power of Justice as a card to go to your hand. So, all right. Now, maybe you're getting all those rules right. You just started playing and you knew all of those ahead of time. Great, you're way ahead of me. So, because I messed up a lot of rules, and if you watch my plays, I still continue to mess up rules here and there. It's really tough. The game's got a lot of rules to it. Hopefully, these will help you play better if you're just starting. Some things to consider. Things like Nick Fury sticking around is great. Things like knowing how webbed up and stunned work together are very powerful too. Make sure, and this is going to be a thing throughout everybody that you play, pay attention to what's a hero resource and also what are alter ego resources, because there's a lot of things that I really want to use in my hero form, but they are labeled an alter ego resource. So there we go. That's it. That's my top 5 little things playing Spider-Man, and some rules that I needed to watch out for, or that I learned from, or that I played wrong, essentially, and have now learned the error of my ways and have corrected my play with that. So hopefully that helps you along. So that's it for now, and thanks for watching.